like Jack Kemp haven't been able to make a bigger impact on the race. Paul Jagot pointed this out in the Wall Street Journal last Friday. Very good point. That a lot of what the conservatives wanted, Reagan implemented. And so the question now for conservatives is, where do we go from here? Defeatism, such as the item quoted by Buchanan, isn't the answer. Conservatives have to mature politically, and I think they will.
I don't think they can do that. I mean, that's asking a lot.
Here's The Nation. Here's what it looks like in the March 5th issue, and I'm going to open it up and look at Christopher Hitchens' column right here. And I just want to read you and get Vladi to respond to what Mr. Hitchens says. A continuing theme in the tenure of Ronald Reagan, the president of laughter and forgetting, has been the steady politicization of the Justice Department. What do you think of reference to the President of the United States as a president of laughter and forgetting?
Oh, well, it's obviously Mr. Hitchens is clever in picking up on the movie based on a Kundera novel. But I think I'd rather read Mr. Hitchens when he describes his trips to Havana and conversations with Castro and other Cubans. He seems to be more at home in pieces like that.
Hitchens?
Yeah, that's feeble even by the standards of the American Spectator. Never had a conversation with Castro. Recently wrote a report from Cuba, from the Havana Film Festival, as a matter of fact, about the failure of the Cuban Communist Party to live up to the reports of glasnost in the Soviet Union. So your remark is ignorant as well as an attempt at a slur. On the politicization of the Justice Department, I'd only add that I see yesterday Mr. Meese yet again doesn't think he should step down. And I don't know when, I don't know if it's possible to ask the question in this way, I don't know when he would ever admit to the idea of a conflict of interest. I don't know. It's so far proved impossible to show him convincingly what the idea means. There's no evidence that he understands it. I think it's actually a very serious thing, that's why I wrote that column, that the Justice Department is presided over by a man who has so many friends who are on the take, all of whose business dealings appear to be questionable, and none of whose statements on the central political scandal of this administration have turned out to be true, but had a certain marginal utility in allowing the perpetrators to get away, to cover their tracks. I mean, this is a very serious thing to have an Attorney General who's probably a crook.
Probably a crook. That's sort of been the view of Meese from day one, ever since he came to the administration and then to the Justice Department. And it emanates from people who are simply completely opposed to the Reagan view of the judiciary, of the Constitution, of the role of the courts. And so since the opposition cannot discuss these issues on their merit, they prefer to go after Meese under alleged corruption, which simply doesn't stand up. These Washington Post stories, day after day, based on nothing new. They're just trying to keep the issue alive.
We're going to go to the phones. Going to go to the phones in about 5 minutes. The numbers have been on the screen. As a matter of fact, all 8 lines are already lighted, so if you're getting a busy signal, that's the reason. You mentioned going to the... Were you in Havana?
Mm.
What was the name of
It's the
Cuban
Latin American Film Festival.
What do you think, this is Newsweek, the cover story on Jesse Jackson, what do you think when they publish photographs like that?
Of Jackson with Castro?
Yep.
Why not?
Does it hurt him? Does it help him? Does it matter?
I don't think it's designed in that case to hurt him. He can't have gone there in order to be hurt, and he certainly knew the photograph was being taken. It will only look damaging to people who don't think it's incredible that there isn't an American ambassador in Havana. There's an American ambassador in Moscow. There's an American ambassador in Czechoslovakia. There's an American ambassador in Peking. It's absurd and abnormal. There isn't one in Havana. There shouldn't really have to be anything exciting about it.
I'm sure that we would have an ambassador in Havana if Mr. Castro could with us a little more on peace in our hemisphere. But since Castro tends to support revolutionary movements that are out to set up Soviet bases in our hemisphere, since he's running drugs or having very close contact with drug runners, since he oppresses his own people, jails them, beats them, kills them, it's a bit odd to speak of him as just anybody, any other politician.
Here's the cover of U.S. News and World Report, and the cover is about a book by Steve Emerson secret warriors inside the covert military operations of the Reagan era. But inside, I want to get your quick comment before we go to the phones. Here's a picture of a photograph of Vice President George Bush, and there's what this magazine's suggesting will be who will be in his cabinet. And I want to get Christopher Hitchens' reaction to this. Let's go quickly down the page. At State, it would be James Baker, Nick Brady, former senator. At Treasury, Defense would be John Tower. This is the magazine's guess. Staff would be Craig Fuller, who's on his staff now, and Richard Darman, who used to be at the Treasury Department at OMB. Your reaction? That's
the sort of thing that makes Pat Buchanan go into a decline and start to have a baby. I mean, as in the article you quoted before, it's a sort of nightmare for the Republican right, all these sort of tightly buttoned moderates. I'm interested to see the Craig Fuller, because he's the man whose name is on the memo that may hang Bush and prevent him from becoming president.
Your reaction?
Well, again, guesswork as to who will be staffing Bush's cabinet and administration. Naturally, I think it will veer toward people who are rather established in Washington and have a more moderate persuasion. But again, it doesn't mean conservatives have to despair. People like Darman came around quite a bit while he was in the administration, and there's no reason to think that others may not as well. But the right has to remain articulate, vocal, and confident, and I think then conservatives will have a voice.
Here's a photograph of the governor of Massachusetts, and I want to get your quick reaction to what kind of a president this man would be before we grab our first call.
He would make Bush look like a lost opportunity. He's completely ignorant on foreign policy. He's been the benefactor of his predecessors' economic policies in his own state. I mean, he walked into a thriving economy, and he's now trying to profit from that politically. It's helped him financially. He's made a killing in raising money in Massachusetts, which is one reason why he's doing so well, because he's simply very well financed.
Chris Hitchens?
I don't think he's ignorant on foreign policy. I mean, he's one of the few candidates ever to have worked abroad or to speak another language apart from English. And I think he also does speak Greek, so that makes three. On Central America, he has the soundest policy of all the candidates. He correctly describes the Reagan administration's intervention there as illegal as well as disastrous, and says it would stop. And when he was governor of Massachusetts, he pardoned Sacco and Vanzetti.
Let's grab a call. Columbus, Georgia. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I've got a comment for your guest that wearing the glasses. In reference to Jesse Jackson, the negative comment he made about him, in reference to Jackson taking the picture with Fidel Castro.
Go right ahead, sir.
Well, my question to him is, excuse me, what is the difference between Jesse Jackson taking a photo with Castro than with Ronald Reagan shaking hands with Gorbachev? Don't both countries have the same policy as far as how they are depressing their own people?
Thank you, sir.
No, President Reagan was meeting with Mr. Gorbachev as part of official U.S. policy. It was a summit meeting. Fidel Castro met with Jesse Jackson traveled to Fidel Castro as a private citizen. He was expressing his personal preference for Castro. It's not the same thing at all.
Wladyslaw Placzynski is originally from Santa Barbara, California. We go next to Seattle, Washington.
Good morning. First of all, Brian, I want to say that I got cut off twice last week.
Well, if you got cut off, were you on the show at all?
Well, yeah, but then just before I was ready to get on, I got cut off, and then I called back Wednesday after, because I'd been to the caucus, and he told me to call back on the Super Tuesday number, and I told him I probably couldn't get back on, which is exactly what happened.
Okay, why don't you go ahead then and make your point this morning?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to tell Christopher Hitchens I renewed my subscription to The Nation.
Bravo.
But anyway, I'm going as a delegate for Gore, regardless of what Christopher Hitchens thinks. And if he doesn't make it, I'll go for Jackson, because I cannot vote for Michael Dukakis.
Why is that, caller?
Well, I think he's pompous and arrogant, and I think there's a certain amount of harassment by his people at the caucuses, and I heard that from other precincts also. In other words, they implied to me that if Gore didn't get enough, that I'd have to go with Dukakis, and different things like that. I mean, especially with older citizens. But I won't vote in this election if he gets nominated, I'm sorry to say. And that'll be the first vote I haven't cast since I cast my vote for Harry Truman.
All right, thank you. Chris Hitchens?
Well, I must say I'm surprised. I mean, Dukakis doesn't normally arouse strong anti-emotions of that sort. His problem, I think, is on the whole